I was an army brat, so I was born in Germany with British parents, and then we travelled to England, and I moved schools a lot. So I ended up being a pretty quiet, introverted kid, and I went on to business college. Liked business college a lot more than school, and had a bit of an aptitude for typing and shorthand, and then found myself working in all sorts of business situations. So I had lots of jobs being a PA, and then I worked in marketing and public relations and event management. And then my husband and I, and our two children at the time, I've got 3 kids, we ended up moving to the Clare Valley because we'd come up here for an Easter holiday, stayed in the caravan park, loved it a lot, and left the Clare Valley, go back to Adelaide after having bought a block of land on our way through. So then we moved up here with our kids, had a 3rd child, and we're now living in a little valley outside the Clare Valley called Armagh. And we've got a couple of acres and a dog, and the kids have all left home, which is great. So that's sort of how I ended up in the Clare Valley with no real sort of useful skills for jobs at the time, 30 years ago. There were no real roles for private secretaries or people in marketing or public relations or event management. There was not, the tourism industry hadn't boomed. So I ended up working at a primary school for a bit, and then a high school as a school services officer. And then I left and had my 3rd child. And accidentally, which is what's happened most of my life, fell into the role of a journalist at the local paper, because the local paper, the owner, saw me washing cars one day and said, did I want a part-time job? And I said, oh, that would be nice, but I had a baby. He said, bring it along, and you can start work here one day a week as a proofreader. So I was a proofreader for a bit, then I became a sort of a community reporter, then I became a journalist, then I did some uni studies, and in the end I left work as a senior journalist at my paper and started my own business. Look, I'm not sure if it's been beneficial to my success. In some ways, it's been useful, but most of my work in my own business takes me outside of the Clare Valley and outside the scope of the people I used to mix with, although I have got a really, really large list of contacts, so that's helpful. And I know how to get things into the media because of my previous media experience. I know what's required to get a media release or get the media interested in something that my clients might be doing. So from that perspective, it's really handy. And look, I suppose if I do look back, it has been, honestly, it's a funny journey. Being a journalist, being exposed as a journalist in your local community means that people know you if you're in a rural town. And so when you go shopping, they stop and they say, oh, I've got this interesting story, and would you be interested in writing about that? Or, oh, you're doing something about that? Or there's a hole in the road up my street. Can you do something about that? Because the council's not doing anything. So we, as journalists in rural communities, we tend to get really immersed in the minutiae of what happens in our communities. And when I stopped being a journalist, it took a little while for people to recognise that I couldn't actually do anything about their lovely local stories anymore. But as I say, my business really involves, most of my clients are outside my community. And I have one major client in my community, which is the local council. And the rest are generated through lots of opportunities that I've had with working with people around South Australia. When I left my workplace, I kind of semi-retired, and I wasn't quite retirement age, but my husband had retired from his workplace, and I thought, well, it was an opportunity for me to leave where I was working. It was a big decision at the time, and I didn't have a lot of money, so I went on to Centrelink, and because I was older, going on to Centrelink in my early 60s, the Centrelink officer that was assigned to me suggested that I might like to think about running my own business. And I thought, well, that was a bit of stupidity because I didn't have any portable skills. I didn't think I could do anything. And she thought I could. And so she suggested the NEIS scheme, the NEIS scheme. And at the time the scheme was running, I'm not sure quite, it's still running in a form now, but at the time, which was 11 years ago, it was offering a 1 year of this NEIS scheme where instead of being on Centrelink and looking for jobs, you could start developing your own business within that 12 months. And the government paid you the same amount of money as if you were on Centrelink. And they also offered training. So I managed to do a year building a business plan, building my business, and just learning what I could do and what skills I needed to keep developing my business. So I think any government scheme that offers people who want to start their own businesses a bit of a springboard into doing that is really, really valuable. And there's quite a lot of grants and things that keep coming up all the time. And so just be on the lookout for them. If you're on schemes like Centrelink, go to your Centrelink office and ask some questions, do some research on the internet. There's quite a lot of interesting opportunities out there to help people start their own business if that's what they want to do. So the idea of feeling disadvantaged by living in a rural area, that's a tricky question because in some ways it's got advantages because you know people, and also there is some funding for people who live in rural and regional areas and opportunities that come up that I wouldn't have been exposed to if I hadn't lived where I do. I live in the Clare Valley, and so we're about 100, 110 k's from the Adelaide CBD. And the travel is certainly an issue. COVID was a miracle for people like me who work remotely because it exposed everybody to the idea of Zoom and other ways of communicating via the internet. So we were able to continue and even expand our client bases if you lived in a rural area just by staying at home and using the internet. As far as other opportunities for building a business via networking, I've been in business 11 years, and in that 11 years, I've built my business almost entirely through networking. So it's all been word of mouth. It's bumping into people, having conversations, handing out my business cards. And I actually had someone contact me a month ago saying, "Oh, I met you 5 years ago at this networking event, and I now need your services." And so she booked time with me. So you never know what's going to happen at a networking event or how far-reaching it can be. But the disadvantages, of course, are the distance, trying to fit everything in. I've done a lot of training, and when I started my business, my training had to be face-to-face. So I used to travel hours and hours to go to workshops and learn things. Then the internet prevailed and I was able to do a lot of online workshops, so that was helpful. But even now I see clients because they want to see me face-to-face and I have to travel. So fuel prices being what they are, the whole thing starts being honestly, it starts being really awkward for lots of people who work in rural areas, but we're resilient. And when we go to Adelaide, people say, "Oh, where are you staying overnight before you go home?" And we always say, "Oh, look, we're not staying overnight, we're driving home." And it's a 2-hour drive, so that's fine. And you get used to that. Oh, upskilling is a wonderful thing. I'm a lifelong learner. I think learning is the best thing ever. And the tyranny of distance has gone away now. We can learn so much just by using the internet, phones. We can even connect our TVs to YouTube and watch YouTube videos on lots of things. I just believe that it's really important for us all to keep up with technology and the changes that are happening, because if we don't, they'll pass us by. If we're in business, and it doesn't matter what our age, but if we're in business, we need to keep up with it. Doesn't matter what your business is. You could be a retailer, you could be selling flowers in the street, or you could be working from home and working like I do with small businesses. It's all about knowing what's happening around you and not being left behind. So terribly important. And what's so wonderful is that there's so many opportunities to learn. Lots of free videos, lots of free learning opportunities, lots of places that you can go to around South Australia and Australia to go to workshops. Yeah, no, I love it. Lifelong learning is the best thing since sliced bread. Oh, I've been drawn to working with women in the workforce, and particularly older women in the workforce, because I am one. I have always thought that women shouldn't be, I don't know, leaving work and playing bowls and sitting at home and knitting. If that's what somebody wants to do, that's fine. But I've just found that a lot of older women find that there's a time they get to a time in their lives when their kids have left home and they may be, they've paid off all the debt, the mortgage is done and dusted, and they're now got a chance to perhaps take a risk without risking too much. And that risk could be starting their own business. And I think that's where I'm really attracted to the idea of older women leading their best third life, going on and doing something they really want to do, that they enjoy, that gives them satisfaction, gives them a sense of achievement. In my case, what happened to me was that I'd always been an employee, and I had never thought, I dabbled with the idea of having my own business over years. I was still working, but also had a shared interest in an art gallery in Unley back in the 1970s. I've had a few other interests in business, but I've always kept my day job because I was afraid. Once I'd left my day job and I had a chance to go out on my own because someone gave me some confidence and someone gave me a bit of work, and that's how my business started, I suddenly realised how much fun I was having. And it is just the best thing. Being your own boss is great. I'm a great boss because, I'm just nice to myself. and that's got to be an advantage. And I think that if older women want to challenge themselves, learn some new skills, or use the skills they already have to turn themselves into a little business or earn some extra money, or in my case, my business is a full-time job. I have no exit strategy. I'm in I can't even remember how old I am. What am I, 70? I'll be 74 this year. I have no exit strategy because I like what I do. I'm still capable of doing it. I keep up with technology. And I think any other women, whoever, who want to do the same, I applaud them, and I'll be there to support them as well. I'm actually an introvert. So when I talk to other people about the fact that I'm an introvert, but I can still network quite well and get quite a lot of work when I do go to networking events, people talk to me in corners, and I'm quite happy to do that, because when I'm an introvert and I go to a networking event, I have a purpose. And I've discovered too that there's a lot of entrepreneurial people, business people, who are also introverts. So I think it might actually be a trait of entrepreneurs to be slightly introverted. We get we have a lot of trouble going to events where we have no purpose. So we're going to a cocktail function or a dinner. Sometimes it's really hard to hold a conversation or to insert ourselves into groups and get chatting with people that we don't know. But when we're networking and we've got business cards to hand out and the purpose is to talk about our businesses, we're really good at that. And I don't think it's detrimental to us or our businesses going forward that we are introverted. We generally tend, as introverts, we tend to focus more on getting things done as well. So whilst the glamorous extroverts run around with their arms in the air and they're, making themselves boldly known to everyone, we stand back and we assess what's going on, and we pick our times and we pick our subjects and we pick the people that we want to talk to. And I think we probably end up with a better lot of contacts than our extroverted friends when we go out. So I don't honestly think that being an extrovert is necessarily an advantage to business. And I sometimes think that a little bit that being an introvert is a huge advantage because we're not brash and we don't get ourselves in the spotlight too much unless we really need to, and we know when to step back.